that, we'll get on to the business of the day. But first of all, I'd like to introduce Sarah Weinman. And Sarah is the person who has been overseeing our engineering lecture summer series. And she is, in fact, the person who got Scott to come here. So Sarah deserves a big hand a priori.
I had many people call and ask me if it was going to be on TV because they couldn't make it. So this talk is going to be broadcast on Tuesday, August 2nd on the Lab's TV channel. So if you can't make it, please tell your friends or people that couldn't be there.
How many of you have seen Dilbert in the newspaper? That's a good sign. How many people think I look just like him? It's going to be that kind of a crowd, okay. I'm a little sensitive about it because one of the problems with being, as I call myself, a micro-celebrity is that people start writing and saying all kinds of things about you. If you don't know what a micro-celebrity is, kind of in the food chain of celebrities, you've got your superstars like Madonna and Mick Jagger, and then you've got your stars like William Shatner, and you've got maybe your minor celebrities like the people who read the news in the local station, and then there's the person who does the weather on the local station, and there's the weekend weather person on the local station, and there's cartoonists right there. But even with that, people like to write things about me. A few months ago, some of you may have seen, there was an article on the front page of the San Jose Mercury, which was about me, and the reporter had decided ahead of time that I was Dilbert, and that was going to be the slant of the story. So his description of me on the front page of this metropolitan newspaper was, he's not at all like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He said the bald spot in the front of his head is marching toward the bald spot in the back of his head like Patton toward Montgomery. What I learned from that was it's not good to do interviews near D-Day. So what you're going to hear in the next hour or so is, first I'm going to tell you a little bit about my strange odyssey to become a cartoonist. I'll leave out some of the tricks because I don't want you to actually duplicate it and be my competitor. Most people have harbor some kind of secret desire to shed their day job and do something more interesting. So I'll tell you what I did to kind of beat the odds. You probably have a sense that the odds of becoming a syndicated cartoonist are something like 1 in 10,000. So I'll give you an idea just how I beat those odds. Then in the middle, I'll show you some cartoons that never got published for reasons that I think will become quite apparent. And I'll show you some that did get published that I kind of wish hadn't at this point. And then I'll share with you some of my secrets for being funny, so that those of you who are deadly boring today can leave this room more interesting people. Your friends will like that too. And at the end, I'll take some questions. I'll take some questions at the end, so if anybody's got any, you can start thinking about them now. Here's kind of a warm-up cartoon. It says, I have to give a speech to the Society of Engineers today. I'm a bit nervous. Sometimes you can relax by imagining the audience is naked. Whoa, cancel that. I just pictured 400 naked engineers. So if I don't make much eye contact today, you'll forgive me. Is that a dog bird all over there? Hold that up. I want to see that. I thought I had the only one. I've got a prototype of that. But you have actually glasses on yours, so that's good.
I made it for my wife. I figured he had to come here.
Appreciate that. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be a cartoonist since I could draw, since I can remember. And I took a rather methodical approach to it. The first thing I did was I decided what are all the great careers you could have, so I could pick the best one. And one of the things I found out fairly early on is that all the really good jobs you can do in your pajamas, basically. If you think about it. Take the best job in the world, which was the Pope. Got that. Supreme Court Justice, there's another one. Bathrobe, basically. There's Hugh Hefner's job, and then there's cartoonist. So I naturally started with the best job, and originally I set my sights on being Pope. But as I looked into that, it turns out you have to be Catholic, and that's exactly the kind of thing they check. So I just gave up on that entirely. But I looked at Supreme Court Justice, and that seemed pretty attractive for a while. But as I looked into it, it turns out that the new guy always has to do the stuff like take the notes and get the coffee and stuff. I thought, why start at the bottom? So I kind of crossed that one off the list. And Hugh Hefner already had his job, so really that left cartoonist. But how do you become a cartoonist? I mean, where do you start? So I did the logical thing, which is I applied to the famous artist school for young people. And this is the only slide you actually won't be able to see. This will be a little too small. I only show it because it proves that I'm not making this up. My mother found this in the attic. This was part of my application for the famous artist school. And you can see said, why would you like to become an artist? I said, it could be a good job when I get older. I like to draw. And that was a lie, of course. I didn't want to tell them that I really wanted to be Pope, but I was being kind of political even then at an early age. They turned me down. I was rejected by the famous artist school because it turns out you have to be at least 12 years old to be a famous artist, and I was only 11 at the time. So, well, I think you can see why. Here's some more of my tests from the famous artist school. Here I drew this dog. This is the very first dog bird, I guess. I also did the writing. I'm proud of that. And got a B on that. Pretty much gave up on this whole cartooning notion when I got rejected. Didn't really do anything until I went to college. I took one drawing class, just kind of to see if I could rekindle some of that. I managed to get the lowest grade in the class, which surprised me because I was always the first one done on every assignment. And I thought that should count for a lot more than my teacher did. So a number of years went by. I guess I was 30 years old or so, and I'd finished my MBA at night, and it seemed like I had a lot of free time, so I decided I think I'll try to become a cartoonist. But I had really a limited goal, which is I wanted to have one cartoon published in one place, and that's all. I just wanted to get one thing published in a magazine, but I didn't know how to do that. So I just happened to come home one day. I caught the end of a TV show, public TV show on cartooning, and I missed the entire show. I just got the credits at the end. And I wrote down the author's name and the city it was broadcast from. I wrote him a letter. I tracked him down and said, how do you become a famous cartoonist? And he wrote back 2 long pages, in handwritten pages, told me what book to buy, how to do it. And he said, I sent him some samples too of some cartoons. And he said, well, these are good things, and if you try, you'll get rejected a lot, but don't give up because everybody gets rejected, and just don't be discouraged by this. So I put together a bunch of cartoons, and I sent them off to the big magazines that paid the most money, and they came back within a half an hour or so, I think. I found out they actually have an agent at the post office who just turned around saying the stamp wasn't canceled, it was just missing. So I got my rejections. I said, well, I tried. That's all I can ask for. So I just put all my stuff away, and I kind of forgot about it. And a year went by, and I got a letter from the same cartoonist who wrote the first time. And bear in mind, I hadn't even thanked him for the first letter. And all he did was he said basically that he'd found my stuff in his files, and he said he wanted to encourage me to submit my ideas again. And sometimes encouragement in the funny business is hard to find. I wish you luck. And I thought, gosh, that's nice. He just found these a year later. And it was the first objective kind of critique of my work I'd ever had, because you don't trust your friends and your family. I mean, they're the first ones who are going to lie to you, because they're going to say, oh yeah, that's really good, Scott. Why don't you do something with that? So I decided that rather than being rejected by mere magazines, I would set my sights higher and be rejected by major cartoon syndicates. So what I did was, I'd already developed Dilbert at that point. He was just a doodle, and I drew up 50 or so cartoons, and I decided to mail them off to the major syndicates. This is my cover page. So you're seeing the very first kind of Dilbert ever. This was before Dogbert had actual legs. Going there. It's kind of the pollywog kind of effect there. And somebody at a major syndicate actually looked at that and said, yeah, I think he could be a major cartoonist here, amazingly enough. Actually, the first syndicate that called me back, the guy said, we were looking at your work and just called to suggest that maybe you take art lessons. And I said, well, thank you very much. And then he suggested that maybe I find somebody to do the drawing. You know, he said, well, your writing's kind of good, but you know, maybe somebody could do the drawing for you. And I was thrilled at that time even to get a phone call, but I kind of held out. And as it turns out, the next call I got was from a company called United Media, and the woman said, I'm an editor at United Media, would like to offer you a contract right there over the phone. And I thought, you know, I didn't mail my samples to anybody named United Media. I'd sent them to United Feature Syndicate, and I thought, well, maybe it's somebody got the package and handed it to somebody they knew. So I was playing it kind of coy because I didn't know who this outfit was. You know, I didn't know if they were reputable or not. So I said, well, I might be interested. Do you handle any cartoons that I might be familiar with? And she said, yeah, we handle Garfield and Peanuts. And this is the point where you realize your negotiating position has just been compromised entirely. So a few months later, sure enough, I was had a contract and became syndicated in 1989. Now Dilbert's in 250 papers and books, and I get to talk to big crowds of people like this. And one of the most frequently asked questions is, do you ever get in trouble in your day job for doing this? And the answer is yes, actually. And here's the cartoon that did it to me. But only once, actually, it turns out. It was fairly early on in the Dilbert saga. I wasn't in too many papers. And I received a memo from a vice president at Pacific Bell. And it was one of those memos that was meant to inspire. but it didn't do quite that. And so Dilbert got a similar kind of a memo. Said, urgent memo to all employees. Uh-oh, looks important. If we are to remain competitive, you must proactively improve quality on all actionable items. Wow, that was inspiring. My heart is pounding. I'm all tingly. I'd better take the rest of the day off. Now I think that would have been okay, because in fact I changed the words of the memo slightly. You know, I think I probably added the word items or something. But somebody really liked this cartoon and clipped it out of the newspaper and handed it out at the staff meeting of the vice president who wrote the memo, the original memo. And turns out he recognized it. And I found out a year later that he had called my boss aside and said, as it was related to me, this quote, put a black bead in the Scott Adams column. Now, I don't know what that means exactly, but I know I didn't get promoted too much after that. So after I found out about that, I did this cartoon. This vice president used to do something called Lunch with the Common People. He didn't actually call it that, but I was a victim of one of those lunches, and so Dilbert became the victim too. You've been randomly selected to have lunch with a senior executive of the company. This is how the executives show that they're regular people just like you and me. And then at lunch, I could squash you like a bug. Ha 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 ha. Well, I wasn't really done with him yet, so. How was your lunch with the executive vice president? Everything was fine until the food fight. He started throwing au gratin potatoes. I countered with an ear of corn to the head and ran for the exit. When I left, he was face down in the clam chowder, and the kitchen staff was singing, "Ding dong, the witch is dead." And they haven't really bothered me since then. Now, one of the constant stress points in a cartoonist's life is trying to get away with a little bit, have a little more creative freedom. And one of the ways that I found early on that I could do that, since my editor would sometimes look at my work and say, you can't really say that in the papers, you can't really do that, is I'd find ways to kind of stretch your boundary with a cartoon that I knew wasn't going to get published, but I'd figure I'd win the next one. You know, kind of the Ty Cobb approach. You argue every call, and maybe the next one will go your way. So here's one that was part of just stretching the boundaries. So this never appeared in the newspaper. You'll see why, I guess. Now here's Vanna White for X-Lax. When they asked me to endorse X-Lax, I thought, who better to talk about vowel movements? I guess this is the logical career move after Goddess of Love. Okay. Now some of the cartoons like that one, I knew when I wrote it that it wouldn't be in the paper. There are other ones that I write, and I really think will get in until my editor looks at it. And it turns out that there are some groups that are far more litigious than other groups. So things that you would not think would be a big problem sometimes are a big problem to them. So here's one that got pulled. It did not run in the newspaper. Would you like to buy some cookies, Mr. Dogbert? How can I be sure my money won't go to support terrorist acts in other countries? You're confusing this with our bake sale. Then there's another class of cartoons where I submit it and we end up negotiating about some word or some little change, and here's one like that. So what you'll see here is the way the cartoon did run in the paper, and then I'll tell you what the negotiated change was and see if you agree with my editor. This is Dilbert giving some financial advice. That's our new strategic diversification fund. Our lawyers put your money in little bags, and we have trained dogs bury them around town. So they bury the bags of the lawyers. Now, what you might ask was different in the original, and the answer is, instead of lawyers, originally it was senior citizens. Well, the editor's not always wrong. Okay. And early on in Dilbert's career, maybe the second year that it was syndicated, I decided that Dilbert needed a love interest, so I was actually going to have him lose his innocence in the cartoon. And my editor decided, you know, that the cartoon wasn't really solid enough in enough papers, and that would just make enough people mad that, you know, better hold off on that. If any of you get my newsletter, you'll know that you only have to hold off till August 9th to get a resolution here. So read the paper on August 9th. That's a little tip for you. But this was the strip that got pulled, so this one did not run, and this had to do with a woman in Dilbert's office who was rather frisky. And she says, Dilbert, I need your advice. I've had torrid romances with half of the men in the department this year. Should I seek counseling? He says, oh, I'd give it another year. So poor Dilbert's actually had to wait several years. Here's another in the category of cartoons that originally you submitted one way, and then I changed it. Originally I was going to introduce a character who was Satan, and he was actually going to be Satan. He was just going to be part of the cast. And my editor said, yeah, you can't do that. People are going to, you know, be mad. They'll think that you're in league with Satan or something. And so I ended up negotiating down to this character. It was, oh good, the last stop of the day. Freeze, mortal, let me see the expiration date on that milk. I can go to hell for drinking old milk. Nah, from heck, we handle the little stuff. And you'll note the spoon instead of a fork here. That was... Then there's a whole category of cartoons which aren't dirty, except maybe in the minds of the readers. So, you know, if you think so, it's because you're perverts, basically. So here's a cartoon my editor decided to pull, but I always thought we should have run this one. This is Dilbert at a date. He says, personally, I think my brain is my most erogenous zone. Oh, then you like it when men can speak intelligently on a wide range of topics? No, I like it when men can stick their tongues way into my ear. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves, really. Some of you know the character Ratbert. We've seen him. Okay. This is the strip where he was originally introduced. So it's the very first Ratbert strip where he was still in the laboratory. And I want to, this will be interactive. I'm going to show the strip, and then I want you to guess who got mad at this strip. Okay. Here we have a lab rat, specially bred to be susceptible to peer pressure. How about a brewski? I don't drink. All the cool rats drink beer. Okay. Of course, there's more to science than just hurting animals, but frankly, it's the part I like best. All right. Anybody want to guess who got mad at this cartoon? You did? Yeah, the answer is you did. Most people guess it's the beer companies or the cruelty to animals, but actually it was scientists who were offended here. So after I found out that, I wrote this. At the Scientist Anti-Defamation League, we must dispel society's notion that scientists are almost always male. Unfortunately, our membership is totally male because all of you joined just to meet women. Any ideas? Maybe we could merge with the aerobic instructor Anti-Defamation League. This is the part of the presentation where I make sure I know where the exits are. All right, here's another cartoon. I'll show you this and then see if you can guess who was angered at this. This is where Dilbert is transferred to marketing. Every Tuesday we barbecue a unicorn. Make mine rare. Haha, get it rare. I'm not sure I believe this is the best part. So there were several letters to the editors in some local papers where some 12-year-old girls who were big unicorn fans wrote in and said, and I quote, "There's nothing funny about frying a unicorn." And, of course, I agree with that, which is why I'm having it barbecued in that cartoon. Then there was a series where Dogbert got a job as a square dance caller. And let me just show you the two lead-up cartoons, and then I'm going to show you what happened because of that. Here he is interviewing for the job. "I was skeptical about hiring a dog as our new square dance caller, but your resume is impressive. I didn't even know you could win a Pulitzer Prize for square dance calling. Wow, and you're already in the Aberdeen Hall of Dung." And then Dogbert did get the job, and here he is doing his job. "Swing your partner, do-si-do, now clap your hands. Uh-oh, that's all the square dance moves I know. I'll bluff the rest. Slap your partner in the face. Write bad checks all over the face. Flirt with strangers, annoy your spouse, get a divorce, and lose your house." Okay. And I got this. Let me just read, just want to read this one part that I like, which is, "Square dancers and their callers do not deserve the negative press extolled by cartoonist Scott Adams. If he has had a bad experience with square dance calling, I can assure you that it was very, very isolated and not at all representative." Ironically, that was my only bad experience with square dance calling. Okay. Here's one that surprised me a little bit. "What did you do to your hair?" "It's for my new television show, Healing for Dollars. People send more money if you have this kind of hair. It might be a trick." That's what I thought until I saw his hair. But not everybody thought that was funny. For example, this person said to blah, 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 "This comic is sarcastic and revolting." So after I saw that, I did this cartoon. "Their cars are always clean. They write letters to express their outrage. Dear editor, the funny pages is no place for sarcasm. Think of the children. They read the same book more than once. They are the people with way too much time on their hands." Okay, here's another in the category of cartoons that it did run in the paper, but we negotiated a change. I'll tell you what the change is after you see this. This is Alice saying, "Don't mind me today, it's almost time for my friend to visit." "That's funny, I would think you'd be in a good mood if a friend were going to visit. She looked puffy, but she struck like a cobra." I could tell when there's a delayed reaction as people are explaining it to the person next to them. Now, the only thing we negotiated is that this character was originally Wally, the little bald guy, and thus his shoulders, I just gave him black hair because my editor said she would never say that unless there was a woman at the table. So that was the only change. Yeah. Okay. Then there are cartoons that should get me in trouble and don't, and I still don't know why. And here's one of those. I'm always nervous on blind dates. Hi, I'm Judy. You must be Dilbert. Hi, how do I look? Fetching. There are no children in the audience today, are there? Okay. Here's one. This was very unusual. I get lots of unusual letters from unusual people saying all kinds of things. And one day I got one from a guy who wrote in and said, "I know what you're trying to do. You made one of your characters look like a penis." And I thought, I kind of dismissed it at the time, but he gave the date of the cartoon, and my curiosity was gnawing at me. So I went back to my archives, and I'm looking through. Sure, I'm sure I've got a cartoon that looks like a. Whoa. So I'll just show you. I'm not going to read this cartoon. You can just play Where's Waldo with it. All right, now here's a cartoon that got me in trouble. At the same time that Disney, of all people, was doing a major motion picture on the same theme, but yet in the comics, somehow people get excited about this. Here's after a plane wreck. We're alive. We must have been thrown clear when the jet hit the mountain. I'm Captain Bob. Sorry about the crash. What are the odds I'd hit the same mountain on every flight? We're in luck. Captain Bob knows how to survive these situations. Nice folks. I'll eat them last. So then this letter came out. I want to read my favorite line in here is this what the Beacon Journal wants our young people to digest? Okay. Now this next cartoon I show not so much for comedic effect, but to show you how wrong you can be when you try to make a point. The point I was trying to make is I guess I was kind of bothered one day. I was reading Calvin and Hobbes, greatest cartoon of all time probably, but one thing that bothered me about it is that little Susie would get hit with these ice balls in the back of the head, and kind of this violence to children, especially females, was kind of bothering me. And so I decided to use the clever technique of sarcasm to make my point about how bad this was, but I did it very poorly, as you'll see. This is, boy, I'm really in trouble with my parents. That's okay, Brad. Our society finds it humorous when young boys are mischievous. I went on a 3-week murder spree. Hee hee hee. Yeah. Yeah, that's what they thought too. There are a few jobs where you can really find out how much you've missed your mark by. When you get a letter like this, remove this trash and give Calvin a whole page. So that's probably the only one I'd take back if I had a chance. Now, one of the little rules of cartooning is that you can do things in books that you can't get away with on the comics pages. In fact, you can get away with less on the comics pages than even the front page of the same newspaper. And nobody really knows why this is. People talk about it a lot. But you can see I'll show you some things from one of my books, that this is something clearly you would not see in the newspapers. This is Restaurants and Screaming Kids. Children are exempt from etiquette in restaurants, and so are their parents. It is accepted practice to bring your screaming child into fine restaurants and ignore him. It is not acceptable to use your table bread to muffle the noise. Waiter, we need more bread. But your best bet is to be direct but be gracious. Champagne and a vasectomy compliments a table three. Likewise, here's one you won't see in the funny papers. This is water fountains. It is rude to touch a public fountain with your lips unless you've developed a relationship with it. You got rude, very rude here. And correct, although I haven't known you long already, I'm thirsty. Okay. Then there's the great fear of every cartoonist, which is you're always trying to mine these little nuggets of truth, these things that happen to everybody, but of course the only way you know is that it happens to you. So you'll do something about something that happened to you, knowing that this must be happening to everybody, and then you put it out there and you think to yourself, oh my God, this might have only happened to me. And this is the one that scared me the most, and I still don't know the answer to this one. It was called Sitting on Them. And it says, sometimes the combination of temperature and ill-fitting clothes causes a guy to sit and scrunch them in mixed company. He has three options. One, tough it out. Two, divert and correct. What is that up there? And explain, then correct, which is not recommended. In a moment, I'm going to do something that may seem unusual. This next strip simply leads up to my next point, which I'll tell you after I read it. Public laundry etiquette. Public laundry facilities have special rules of etiquette. There's no dress code. You can wear anything that's still clean. If somebody leaves your laundry in the washer that you want, you have the right to sculpt a laundry bunny with their stuff. And no matter how bored you get, it is not acceptable to talk the night janitor into taking a dryer ride. It's only 25 cents. So basically, what you're wondering is, what are the danger zones, cartoonists? So, basically you're staying away from that. Those are the things that'll get you in trouble. So then the logical flip part of that question is, who's fair game? And basically, it's these folks are all fair game. You never get in trouble for any of these. Important people, rich people, you can always make fun of because they're kind of above it. They're not. Queen of England is not going to call me and say, I was reading Dilbert yesterday, very offended at your making fun of the monarchy. Then you can always make fun of your boss. That just seems to be fair game, unless the boss finds out, as you've seen from the earlier part of the presentation. And my favorite, of course, is stupid people. Now, the main reason for that, of course, is that they have a fairly ineffective lobby. And lawyers were on that list, always fair game. Here's an example of that. Has the jury reached a verdict? Yes, Your Honor, we find the defense attorney poorly dressed and obnoxious. We sentence him to death. I don't think you can do that. Furthermore, we find that Your Honor looks fetching in a black muumuu. And another thing you have to watch out for is cruelty to animals, as we've seen. In particular, I once had a strip where Dogbert was going to be hit by a rolled-up magazine, just kind of swatted. He wasn't going to be hurt or anything. My editor just pulled that so quick, because cruelty to dogs is like the worst thing. But I did find out that you can have cruelty to rats, as it turns out. And especially it's okay if the rat is doing it to himself, as in this case, Ratbert's Journal. Day 1, I have disguised myself as a chihuahua so I can experience their lifestyle and make a movie. I have already seen the senseless prejudice and brutality against an innocent chihuahua. This morning I slapped myself with a rolled-up newspaper for no apparent reason. It was strangely satisfying. Then back to my favorite group. We've got second day of Dogbert School for self-service gas station attendants. You must learn to relax. I want you to clear your mind of all thoughts. That was too easy. Okay. Along those same lines, we've got Dogbert says, you can free yourself from guilt with the copyrighted Dogbert method. My method is so simple that even stupid people can do it. Do we have any stupid people here today? I didn't get any letters about that, oddly enough. The other category, rich people. I love being rich. I'll give you $10,000 if you wallow in that puddle. I can't see how rich people ever get bored. Yeah, and you can always make fun of whatever category you are. In my case, adult white male, so I can do anything to Dilbert. When he saw my headlights, he froze and his eyes got real big like this. I tracked him back to his computer and waited until he slipped into a programmer's daze. Then what did I do? I plugged him with an arrow. Wow, and you did that without opposable thumbs. Okay. Now, as promised, I'm going to make you all funnier people than you were when you came in here. First rule about writing humor is that there are only 100 jokes in the whole universe. Yeah. And at the end of time, there'll still be 100 jokes. All we do is really kind of change the situation and try to disguise them. And let me show you 2 cases of cartoons that look the same, mostly because it was one joke, but we put the same characters basically in them. First is mine, and the second is from the Fusco brothers, you may have seen. Mine on top says, I can remember when these were only 15 cents, but I'm really dating myself now. Well, it's not as if anybody else would date you. And Fusco brothers, also, a 30-ish-year-old guy with a white dog kind of thing, really a Wolverine for those of you who are purists. And he says, why can't they make quality TV shows like they did when I was a kid, like Rama or The Jungle? Rama of the jungle, you're dating yourself, Al. Let's keep my social life out of this. Now, 2 points. One is, when you put the same characters in it, you can see that it's an identical joke. And two, one of his characters looks like a penis, but I didn't want to be the first one. Okay, now, whenever you're writing a joke, you want to sit down, you've got a blank piece of paper, whether it's just writing or doing cartooning. You always start with these three things. You've got your situation, you've got your character. Point truly is optional. If you look at a great cartoon like the Far Side, there's no point. You know, cows are funny, and that's kind of all there is to it. So in my case, if I know the situation, since I have established characters, it's usually kind of obvious which ones to use. So I'm halfway done, just there. And here's the crux of it. Here's the secret. I even named it after myself, because if somebody else thought of it first, I'm sure they're not in this room. And the basic idea is that there are 6 dimensions. I call them dimensions. They could be 6 things or 6 categories. And the rule is that you have to have 2 of them in your joke to make it funny. You can have 3 or 4, and it might even be funnier, but 2 is kind of the minimum. You can't have just one of them. And just by way of explanation, cute, little animals, children, you know, it's kind of obvious. Recognizable, something that has happened to you in your life or your job. Mean, safe falls on somebody's head, something bad happens to somebody. Bizarre, the Far Side uses that a lot. Anything that's out of place, 2 things that don't belong in the same place. Naughty, I think you've seen some examples of that. And clever, which has several subcategories like puns and plays on words and twists of logic and that sort of thing, all fall in that category. So, just by way of example, some cartoons that use some dimensions more than others, and this is, you know, not the definitive list. They all kind of use every dimension, except maybe for Family Circus. I'm being generous giving it 2 in this case, but you can see that everybody kind of uses at least two from the list, with that possible exception. Now this is true whether it's written or cartoon, and I'm going to read something from Dave Barry just by way of example to show you how he uses 2 and of the 6 as well. Another category under clever is exaggeration, and the best way to do that is you exaggerate a little more, and when the reader is just completely done, sure that you're done, you just give it one more twist, and here's an example of that. He says, babies are equipped at birth with a number of instinctive reflexes and behavior patterns that cause them to spend their first several years trying to kill themselves. If your home contains a sharp toxic object, your baby will locate it. If your home contains no such object, your baby will try to obtain one via mail order. Notice he uses a baby. That's cute. He's got a baby doing something a baby doesn't normally do. That's kind of bizarre. It's out of place. And he's using an exaggeration. He exaggerates it once that they're trying to kill themselves, and then 2 that, you know, the final exaggeration that they would do mail order. So very consistent. One of the another classic technique is something that Stephen Wright, the stand-up comedian, does very well, which is take something that is logical and just change the one element that you normally wouldn't question. For example, he's got a joke, which I'll paraphrase poorly, but he goes to the convenience store and says, open 24 hours, so he knocks on the door, and the guy says, sorry, I'm closed. He says, but your sign says open 24 hours. And the guy says, not in a row. So you take the simple subject and you just take one piece of logic out. Or kind of along the same vein is another one of Stephen Wright's jokes. He says, if you're traveling in your car at the speed of light and turn on your headlights, what would happen? All right, another part of the formula here is that there are some feelings that are funnier than others. For example, all the big feelings like love and hate and sorrow are not really funny because they kind of, you know, have too much meaning. But all the little ones like, you know, stupidity and embarrassment and fear and things like that, those are the ones that are the fodder for humor. So let me show you a real live example of how one Dilbert cartoon was written. I'll show it to you from beginning to end. And what I did was, when I was preparing this presentation a year and a half ago or whatever it was, I decided that I would just document what I was thinking as I thought it, because I didn't really know how it worked myself. So you'll see it the same way I was thinking it. And basically it started with my 3 things. My situation, first of all, was, you know how a boss will often say employees are our most valuable asset? Yeah, now you know you have a winner when the straight line is funny. All right, so given that's my situation, the characters are obvious. I'm using my boss and the employees. And the point, of course, is that, well, maybe that's not exactly true. So the way I write Dilbert is that I do the drawing and the writing for the first panel before I know what's going to be in the second and third panel. So I hadn't planned it at this point other than the setup, which was, I've been saying for years that employees are our most valuable asset. So I wanted to do something, I'm brainstorming on my 6 dimensions and say, well, what would be kind of mean or bizarre or out of place? And of course, the most bizarre thing would be if the boss actually told the truth. So in this case, he says, it turns out that I was wrong. Money is our most valuable asset. Employees are ninth. Now, here I was in trouble already because I had peaked too soon and I had another panel to fill up. So I thought, well, I'll use one other dimension, which in this case was an exaggeration. So he'd already exaggerated one, saying employees are ninth. So I thought I would have Wally say, I'm afraid to ask what came in eighth. Now that the task was, I've got to come up with something, some object or thing, which is so unimportant that it's even more important than the employees, and therefore the final exaggeration. And this was actually the hard part, and the part that you can't teach. So I'm sitting there in my studio at home and thinking, what could be in the office that's very unimportant? And I'm thinking, the stapler. No, that's kind of important. You need a stapler, and the whiteout, and there's the yellow sticky pads, and nothing was working. So I kind of just stopped thinking about it and played with my cat, and literally a phrase just floated into my head at some point when I was thinking about something else, and that became the final punchline, which was carbon paper. You can see that the formula only gets you so far, and then there's some point where you have to pet your cat and drink coffee, and who can explain what happens after that? Timing is also terribly important. It's kind of a general rule that you want to get your 2 of 6 elements in there, but you want to do them as quickly as possible, and that's why single-panel cartoons are often so good. I show this because it's the best example I've seen of getting lots of elements quickly into one cartoon. Wake up, the cat's got your teeth. Yeah. See how many elements he works in there. He's got a cat, so it's kind of cute. He's got something that's bizarre and a place, which is the teeth in the cat. And there's something mean happening here, which is the wife, instead of just taking the teeth out, she wants him to wake up and see the cat. So he's got a lot of elements in there, and very quickly. Good economy of words. So one of the things that people ask me all the time, well, actually, let me do something else first here. Suppose you forgot to write down what any of those 6 elements are, and now you're afraid you'll leave here and you won't be funny after all. Here's a fallback technique. And this has to do with the fact that some words are simply funnier than other words. So without worrying about technique or formula or anything else, if you just use more interesting words, you'll sound like a more interesting person. And to test this theory, I'm going to put up pairs of words that basically mean the same thing. And I want you to just say out loud which one is the funnier word. Yank or pull. Yeah, see? So it's a universal kind of thing. Everybody knows what's funnier. Avoid or shun. Shun, yeah. Okay, they're not all that easy. This one is. Clutch or hold. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if Gary Larson hadn't hit on that, he'd be living in a cardboard box somewhere right now. Okay, let's see how you do on this one. A little bit of a division here, isn't there? Okay, squash people, raise your hand. Okay, zucchini people. Yeah. Okay, well, both answers are correct in this case. All right. So basically, for every normal word, there's kind of an interesting word, a less used word that's more interesting. And if you kind of build those into your vocabulary, you start becoming more funny. A general rule you see at the bottom is that any word that will score more in Scrabble is probably a better word. I didn't make that rule up. That's kind of a standard comedian's rule here. And okay, a few other things. People are always asking me which of my cartoons come directly from my experience and which are kind of just representations or somebody else's suggestions. So let me show you some where the first two panels are essentially identical from my experience, and all I really added was the third. Let me show you where the information is in your binder. First, I'll need a good load of saliva on my page-turning hand. Maybe you can show me in your binder. Can't. Somehow my pages all got stuck together. Yeah. Here's a little tip for reading Dilbert. If you want to figure out which ones happened in my real experience, whenever you see a character that you don't think you'll ever see again, like like with a beard or something, that's actually Bernie, guy I work with. Who, by the way, doesn't know I do this presentation and talk about. He has no idea that that's him. Here's another one. First two panels exactly happened to me. Okay, the staff meeting is over. Does anybody have any meaningless, rambling questions? Johnson, how can we work as a team to achieve total quality without sacrificing customer focus? How many people would like me to make Johnson technical steps? Okay, now I've also spent a lot of time working in labs, and there's nothing more interesting than a staff meeting of lab people. First two panels, again, real life. I think it was 50 gigabits. I think you mean megabits. Ha 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 ha. We're so fun-loving, you'd think one of us would have a friend outside of work. Okay. Here's one that happened to me. I actually had the bad social grace to go up to a coworker named Dave and ask him if he cut his own hair. It turns out it was supercuts, but it was a good guess. So this cartoon came out of that. What happened to your head, Dave? I'm cutting my own hair now. I'm not too far along the old learning curve, but at least I'm saving money. How much did you save? Not counting the divorce and therapy? And there was another fellow at work who was very proud of the fact that his wife made all of his clothing for work. My wife sews all my work clothes. She's the talented one in the family. She hates you, doesn't she? Why do you ask? Okay. All right, this next one I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to take actually show you a few more, and then I'll take some questions. Let me show you this, and I'll tell you why I'm showing it to you. This is Dogbert saying, I'm testing my theory that good advertising can sell anything. So I asked myself, what is the thing least desired on earth? And he put up a billboard that says, ladies, data Dilbert callable. Quantities are limited. The interesting thing is that that's my home phone number on there. Take that down before any of you memorize it. But actually, it was my second line, which I used for my fax. And I put an answering machine on it. And I got 600 calls in like 2 days mostly from men who were just, testing the waters. And a number of people actually were willing to date a cartoon character because it's better than what they'd been doing. A number of men who were offering their wives or girlfriends as a way to open the field for them, I guess. And a few people wanted to double date with Dilbert and Dogbert. I actually got a call from a woman who'd been on a fishing boat in Alaska for 6 months. And she left a message saying that she wanted to date me and Dogbert. Here's some engineering humor. Dilbert talks to a class about career options, and don't forget the social life that comes with being an engineer. 90% of all engineers are guys, so it's a bonanza of dating opportunities for the ladies who enter the field. For the men, there are these little video game devices. Would I be allowed to date a non-engineer? I'll bet you've seen some of these. This is Dogbert talks to a class about career options. Engineering is one of the best careers available. For the next 20 years, I'll be sitting in a big box called a cubicle. It's like a restroom stall, but with lower walls. I spend most of my time hoping the electromagnetic fields from my office equipment aren't killing me. And let me just close with this one because I like it. Still talking to the class. The goal of every engineer is to retire without getting blamed for a major catastrophe. Engineers prefer to work as consultants on project teams. That way there's no real work. Blame is spread across the entire group, and you can crush any idea for marketing. And sometimes you get free donuts just for showing up. Get out of my classroom. Any questions? Questions from the group? I know there are questions. It's an inquisitive group. Yes.
Oh, this is the question segment, sorry. Yeah.
This might get you in trouble with those unicorn people, but you know the difference between a gerbil and a hamster?
I'm sure I'm going to find out.
The gerbil has more bark meat.
Okay, another question. Yes.
Can we write you when we get in trouble for hanging your cartoons up?
I'll take care of it personally. Yeah.
Is there any love interest for Dogbert soon?
Ooh, a lot of people ask that. People are wondering
If Dogbert's been neutered, you know, he has no mouth. He has no genitalia, so to speak. No, there is no love interest for Dogbert. I don't think I'm going to have one in the red.
Do you use a pencil or a pen when you get your...
I use a pencil or a pen. I do the cartoon from 5 to 6 in the morning in pencil, and then I ink over the pencil at nights and weekends and stuff like that. Yeah.
This is how flooded is your American Online account get?
So how much email do I get? I get about 50 messages a day, which is probably not much more than you get here. Except most of mine, actually, I read. Yeah, I have a newsletter, electronic newsletter, and you can just send me an email and I'll put you on the list. My email address is in my script every day between the panels.
What size, when you draw your panels, what size do you have to make them? 8.5 by 11 or 20 by 30 or?
Only the engineers ask that question. I draw them about this big, and then they end up about that big. They only have to be in proportion, so they need to be bigger and proportional. There's no other rule.
Don't worry about them potentially being too small in detail.
I think one of the reasons that Dilbert works is that there's not much detail in it, and the cartoons are so small that it's one of the few that it doesn't hurt you to read too much. I think that's worked in my favor. I mean, I just don't have time to draw the backgrounds. It's the bottom line. That's the only reason. Yeah, I think it was.
You took your day job, and what would you do for the turtle?
And I planning to quit my day job. Cameras rolling here? Yes, I am planning to quit my day job, as we all are, given time.
You don't have anything in there on that series where Dilbert teaches TQM to the Albonians.
I don't have the TQM stuff in these slides, but yeah, I heard that from a lot of people, it turns out. I had no idea how popular that would be. But let me get somebody in the back there in the...
Yeah, you.
How much in advance do you have to what's the timeline from when you draw the strip until it reaches paper?
It's about 2 months now. Yeah, so I'm working on stuff 2 months, which means that I have to kind of guess what's going to happen, you know, if any trends will happen. For example, I'm guessing that Korea will drop the bomb. I don't know. I haven't been wrong yet, but don't worry about that.
Tell us about Dilbert's tie. It's unusual.
Yeah, Dilbert's tie. If you got the newsletter, you would know the answer to that question. The truth is that I never had any plan when I drew Dilbert, and I don't ever remember making the decision to make his tie like that. I mean, it's lost in my history as well. So I don't know is the answer. It just does.
Is it appreciably harder to write Dilbert now that you have a love interest?
Harder to write Dilbert with love interest. Given that I write from my own experience, it's much harder.
What newspapers in the Bay Area have Dilbert?
What newspapers in the Bay Area? Basically everything but the Chronicle is the bottom line. It can't be in the Chronicle because it's in the Examiner and they have an exclusive for the area. But San Jose Mercury News, all the East Bay papers have it, Tri-Valley Herald, Times.
Let me get some over a second. About Yellow.
How much of your material has come over email with an LLNL.gov?
Well, that would be misuse of government resources to send that. I draw one cartoon a day, no matter what. So if at the end of my hour that I have before work to draw them, if my paper is still blank and I've got 5 minutes, all I have to do is adjust the quality. And can always get that one in there. Yeah, yeah.
Do you interact with any other major cartoonists like Larson?
Oh, we dance sometimes. Yeah. No, we have one big thing that's like the Academy Awards for cartoonists, and all the people that you'd really like to meet tend not to go. So Larson doesn't go, Trudeau doesn't go. Yeah.
Did that last trip with, is Lisa her name?
Yes.
Does that count as the other 15% of the day, even though she got hit by the
Wonderful question. You too will have to wait until August 9th for the answer to that. I will tell you that my mail, when I solicited people to say, should Dilbert lose his innocence or should Liz be hit by the meteor, the most impressive answer, and it wasn't a vote, I just kind of wanted to get what people were thinking. The most persuasive argument was neither of those are creative enough. So I kind of wrote myself in a corner there, but you'll see how I get out on the 9th. Yes.
How do you keep from repeating yourself in your mind?
How do I keep from repeating myself in my line?
It's great lines, and it goes on, and how do you keep from not repeating the same line?
Yeah, basically what I do is I get up in the morning and I read Garfield, and I just kind of rewrite it with a dog. Yeah. How are we doing for time here? Give me a reasonability check. Okay.
Yeah. Are your books a collection of the newspaper ones, or are they completely out?
Thank you for asking about my books. They're available at fine bookstores everywhere. There are 4 of them. 2 of them are original stuff. 2 of them are from the first 2 years of stuff, so they're compilations. And the future ones will be mostly compilations, I think. Yeah.
More questions?
Yeah.
Have you had the urge to change your style? Do you try to do the same sort of?
Have I had the urge to change my style? I've thought about actually putting quality in there and learning to draw. Humor, I thought I'd build some of that in there. It kind of changes over time on its own. And that's one of the reasons that I probably will not move to just cutting and pasting on the computer. I'm kind of at the point where I could do that now. Technology's there, and I have the technology, and I could do that. But I like the fact that it changes over time. You saw the original Dilbert. It would not be good if it still looked like that. I mean, that would not be a good thing. So, yeah, it'll change. Was there one?
For people who read the Chronicle, or people just like all kind of cartoons, is there a continuing cartoon Chronicle newsletter that has a lot of cartoons in it?
Is there a newsletter with lots of cartoons in it? Yeah, but I'm the only one that gets it, it turns out. There's a copyright book that goes to cartoonists. There's one in Italy. Over the internet. You can get Dilbert on the internet. So you can, yeah, if you subscribe to Clara News service, or if you have Mosaic, you can go to the GNN pages, and it's not on their home page, but a few layers down, you can find it. Ask for the newsletter. I can give you addresses on it. Yes?
Are you a computer nerd?
My computer nerd. Yeah, I sometimes thought that programming was more fun than sex. I've had that feeling. I guess that would be a yes. Okay.
What kind of comments do you get from your coworkers at Bell and Stevens strip?
One of my coworkers at Pac Bell think they're a bit tentative. No, actually, I think that they like the fact that they could be in the cartoon and get some attention more than they like the embarrassment. So more often I'll get somebody saying, I did something really stupid today. Why don't you put that in the cartoon? It kind of defies logic. It's opposite. What do you think? Let me take about 2 more questions. Yeah.
You mentioned you had a specific magazine in mind when you were first starting. Which one was it?
Which magazine did I have in mind? There are 2 of them that paid the most, and that was my only factor there. Playboy and the New Yorker. They both pay the most. Were you clapping for Playboy or the New Yorker? Interestingly, I'm actually going to be a Playboy interview. They did a 21 questions of me that probably run later this year sometime. There was one other question by you there.
Yeah, Dilbert worked at this lab. What color badge would he have?
Yeah. What color badge would he have? Somebody help me here. green, he'd have a green badge. Okay, thank you very much.